topic of our Dhamma talk tonight is going to be liberation. Now, and with this we'll come, so to speak, full circle with our series of Dhamma talks, and you might remember that in the beginning there was mention of the various goals with that one can pursue in the meditation practice, differently expressed, but in the end all boiling down to just a few things, and one of them is liberation, vimutti in Pali. Now, when it comes to the water of an ocean, well, if we taste a little bit of water from its surface, and if we taste a little bit of water, a sip of water from the middling region of the ocean, or when we taste a sip of water from the depth of the ocean, the taste will be which one? Well, it's going to be the same. And what is the taste? Salty. Yes, indeed. So, it will be the same salty taste throughout. And to stay more or less with the same illustration, whether we drink a small amount of salt water, or maybe a cupful of it, or a bucketful of it, it would still be the same taste, namely a salty taste. So, just like this salty taste pervades the entire ocean from its surface all the way down to its depth, so too there is one taste that pervades the Buddha's teachings. And whether we practice the beginning phase, or let's say primary aspects of the Buddha's teachings, elementary aspects of the Buddha's teachings, such as practicing generosity, dana, and then taking precepts, observing precepts, or we practice the Buddha's Dhamma at its intermediate level, namely in the form of the training in concentration, samatha, or vipassana, or when we practice the Buddha's teachings at its highest level, namely in the form of some supramundane realization, the taste will be one and the same. And what is this taste? The taste of liberation. Yes, indeed. And this taste of liberation pervades or permeates all or the entirety of the Buddha's teachings, in the beginning, in the middle, at the end. And the degree to which we experience this liberation will depend on how much effort we put into the practice. So, if we practice with a small amount of effort, then we'll experience liberation or the taste of liberation only to a small extent. When we make or exert more effort in the practice, let's say some average amount of effort, then we shall experience this taste of freedom to an average degree. And when we exert a big amount of effort, then we shall reap corresponding results, namely as tasting much of that freedom or liberation. So, the taste of freedom or the taste of liberation, vimutti rasa in the Pali scripture language, is one way of expressing what the Buddha's teachings are all about. Now, remember, during the first few Dhamma talks, not the very first one, but first few, there was mention of the gradual path of training. And we then, step by step, looked into or explored the different aspects, such as the initial arising of or hearing the Buddha's Dhamma in one form or another, and then based on this, the arising of some initial faith. And this then leading to thoughts of renunciation, temporary or permanent, and this in turn then leading to the voluntary practice of virtuous conduct, namely the sila, and then the next step as part of this gradual path of training is the practice or is the restraint of the senses. And then this is to be complemented by the practice or the training in mindfulness and clear comprehension, so sati sampajanya, and then in this connection also the text or the relevant passage mentions the selection of an appropriate secluded place for practice, and then next comes the overcoming of the 5 hindrances. And once this has been accomplished, then concentration becomes quite strong, and this then will lead to the arising of wisdom, the first form of wisdom, namely discerning mind and matter. And so when a meditator then goes on to practice, then sooner or later, and all of you have done this, a meditator will intuitively understand, and not intellectually, that these same bodily as well as mental formations are connected by cause and effect. And so once this understanding is there, then quite naturally will one's meditation deepen further and lead a meditator to a direct understanding of the so-called 3 universal characteristics: anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And so we've gone both theoretically as well as practically into those 3 aspects. So by now, after almost 20 days of intensive practice, you are probably quite familiar with them. Now, once this has been achieved, and so the flaws of the conditioned formations have been seen by a meditator to some extent, and this same meditator then continues to practice, and not just for a few more days, but for longer stretches. And then at the very end of the path, there comes the experience of final liberation. And liberation, not certainly in the sense of gaining political independence, or from a yogi's point of view, liberation in the sense that you now can do and say whatever you like, and then throw the precepts overboard and so on, but rather liberation from the mental defilements. And so a person who has gained full liberation, final liberation, then would typically, as is recorded many times in the text, might then utter the following paean of joy, namely, and I'm quoting from Majjhima Nikaya, forever am I liberated. This is the last time I'm here, I'm born. No new existence waits for me. So, this is a paean of joy uttered, what do you think, by an ordinary, ignorant worldling, or is it a paean of joy uttered by an arahant? Or is it a paean of joy uttered by all of you here? Maybe not quite yet, but who knows? 5 years from now, it could be, it could turn into reality. So, such kind of verse of joy will be uttered, or can be uttered only by one who has completely done away with those taints, namely the taint of sensual desire, and then the taint of desire for existence, desire for existence, bhava, asava, and then the taint of ignorance, avijja, asava. And only once these, or in gaining path knowledge of an arahant, these taints get eradicated, and with this then arahantship is realized. So this then marks the final goal of a meditator's meditation practice. Now, and this resonates with what was said at the very outset of this retreat, namely that the goals for the practice can be, or the Buddha himself has stated these goals for the practice in different words, such as crossing the flood that is so hard to cross. That's one way, and a simple way of expressing it, or to gain this taste of liberation, vimutti rasa. And then another way of expressing this goal was by giving it as true knowledge and liberation, so vijja and vimutti. And then a slightly more elaborate way of expressing it or stating it is as purity, knowledge, and nibbana. Now, the Pali term vimutti rasa consists of two parts, namely vimutti and rasa. Rasa is certainly your function or your taste, and vimutti is simply liberation, freedom, deliverance. And or even release or emancipation. And thus vimutti rasa then is the taste of freedom, or the taste of emancipation, or taste of liberation, as you like. Now, this liberation, vimutti, is of different kinds, and we can. It is partly liberation on a temporary basis as we go through the different insight knowledges, and then liberation in a more supramundane sense. Now, the way this word gets explained is fivefold, namely as liberation or deliverance by substitution of opposites. And this is something that very much applies to the insight meditation practice. So Satipatthana meditation as we're practicing it here. And what this means is, and it has been explained before, that certain wrongful perceptions get replaced through an opposite. And to give you one example, namely the contemplation of disgust or revulsion or disenchantment, these are three different names for the same thing, abandons or substitutes the wrongful perception of the formations as delightful. And so thinking, and this is what we usually do, that the ordinary conditioned phenomena are rather interesting and rather delightful. Let's enjoy them as much as possible. And so that's then changes. And the second way of liberation or freedom is by a way of suppression. And so this usually happens through concentration, and it is something, it is a particular procedure happening that takes place both in the samatha meditation, so when one practices the jhanas, as well as in satipatthana meditation. And this kind of freedom or liberation by suppression occurs, and you're familiar with it, when the five hindrances are present in our practice, and then concentration gradually increases, and with the help of concentration, those certain hindrances then will be suppressed. And it's not that they are uprooted from the stream of consciousness through the activity of concentration, but rather they're kind of kept down or kept at a low profile. They can't raise their heads, so to speak. And so with this then, the practice moves on somewhat more smoothly, and usually then wisdom can arise in the context of insight meditation. Now, liberation by cutting off is another form. And so liberation or freedom by cutting off with regard to defilements happens with which event? Who knows? Yes, indeed, the path, that's certainly quite correct. And what we mean by this is not the so-called forerunner path, the preliminary path, but the noble path, the supramundane path, which attains stream entry or any of the other four levels, other three levels of enlightenment. And so freedom by cutting off means that certain fetters or certain defilements will be uprooted, will be eradicated, extirpated from the mind once and forever. Once this has happened, they'll never come back. And so this then marks a major, so to speak, a revolution in one's stream of consciousness, and it's kind of like throwing some unnecessary burden, baggage of overboard. And so the result, literally, is a sense of relief. This is usually what meditators say. Now, freedom or liberation by tranquilization is the fourth form, and this refers to the experience of fruition knowledge. So, phala in the Pali scriptural language. As explained last night to John, there's path knowledge or path consciousness, Magga Jeta, and this then will be followed by fruition consciousness or Phala Jeta. And so when a meditator experiences this fruition consciousness, then indeed, or the result of that is a calming, a further calming of the mind. The mind becomes rather peaceful. And then the fifth and last form of freedom or of liberation is given as, or is achieved by renunciation, and this is referring to Nibbana. And since in Nibbana one, or in order to for this experience of Nibbana to become possible, one just has to renounce all conditioned formations. So, at least on a temporary basis, one has to say goodbye to seeing visible objects and hearing sounds and so on and so forth. Now, towards the ending portion of the Satipatthana Sutta, so the discourse on the establishment of mindfulness, there is mention of a prediction, namely in the sense that whoever undertakes this practice of Satipatthana will, and then the discourse gives a number of time periods. So within 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, so 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, and then 7 months, 6 months, and so on, and then down to weeks and down to 7 days. So within these varying lengths of time, a meditator is guaranteed or will at least lead to one of two results. Namely, what do you think? The attainment of stream entry and the path of one's return? Or? Well, the Buddha is even bolder than this, and he says the practice will lead at least to the attainment of the two higher stages of enlightenment or awakening. So, the highest possible goal can be achieved with the practice of Satipatthana. Now, when one undertakes this practice, then certain mental defilements or mental or fetters are or will be uprooted, and so with the attainment of the first path of stream entry, as we've discussed already, 3 fetters will go, namely the fetter of the wrongful belief in the existence of a self, and then furthermore the fetter skeptical doubt, vicikiccha, and then as number 3, the wrongful belief in rites and rituals, namely that with their help one can gain the Dhamma. And with the second level of attainment, which other fetters get uprooted? Who knows? Yes? Not quite. This was a trick question. Namely, the two that you've mentioned will be attenuated, will be weakened, but not uprooted. And so the sense desire and the fetter of sense desire and the fetter of the ill will or anger will be uprooted only or with the attainment of the third path of anagamihood, so of non-return. Now, these first 5 are known as the 5 lower fetters. That fetter human beings or bind human beings to the round of existence. So as long as these fetters or unwholesome mental states are there, they will make us go around the cycle of samsara over and over again. So this means now we're enjoying a human existence and we're adults, so we've past schooling already, and gradually we're heading towards death, and then comes the next existence, and we have to do it all over again. Get born, and then scream, and wet our diapers, and then learn walking, to stand on our feet, and then this body needs to grow, and then we need to get some schooling, and primary school we have to go through this, and then secondary school and tertiary education. How much time and effort this takes. And so just imagine this over and over again. And don't forget, in between you might fall sick and then get wrinkles, and and gradually your eyesight will get weaker and weaker, and so on. So this is not necessarily a pleasant outlook. And so then, with the attainment of arahantship, so the fourth and final path, a meditator then will uproot the so-called remaining 5 higher fetters, and these in the Pali language are known as Udambaggiya Samyojana, and they are given as the desire for fine material existence, so wanting to be reborn as a celestial being, and then desire for immaterial existence, so like the arupa jhanas, or like a Brahma, and then pride and conceit, mana, restlessness, uddhacca, and the last one mentioned, the most difficult fetter to uproot from the stream of consciousness is that of ignorance. Now, this is just for general knowledge, for you to understand how with these 3 attain or 3 paths, namely first path, third path, and fourth path, certain fetters, certain unwholesome mental states get uprooted. Now, when it comes to the realization of the Dhamma, when it comes to the experience of liberation or freedom, there is a hot discussion that has been going on not just for some years, but already for many centuries. And it's the discussion whether this realization of liberation is taking place gradually or whether it's taking place instantaneously. And so this has been discussed over and over again, and what the Buddha states in this certain connection is simply anupuba seka anupuba kiriya anupuba patipada anya vadana hoti, which means bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, male and female meditators, I do not say that final knowledge or final liberation in our context is achieved all at once. On the contrary, final knowledge or liberation is achieved by gradual training, by gradual practice, by gradual progress. And so, along the same line, we have Dhammapada verse 239, which substantiates the point by saying, by degrees, little by little, from moment to moment, a wise man or woman removes his or her own mental defilements as a smith removes the dross of silver or gold. And the text also give a wonderful illustration for this, and this illustration can be found in Majjhima Nikaya, Volume 1, Section 104, but also in the Samyutta Nikaya and the Anguttara Nikaya, and yet in another place in the Majjhima Nikaya. Namely, our practice is some, or can be compared to our practice of sitting on the cushion and so on, can be compared to a hen sitting on her eggs. And all she needs to do is just sit there. And she doesn't even have to do anything about providing warmth. This will happen quite naturally. So she'll just be sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. Occasionally she'll get up and pick some food, and then diligently, knowing very well her task, return to her task of sitting on her eggs. And as she keeps doing this, she will contribute to the incubation of those chicks. Now, as time approaches, well, the chicks contained in the eggs, their beaks form and get stronger and stronger, and they start, picking at the shell, and eventually hatching from those eggs. Now, so the process of the mother hen sitting on the eggs is a gradual process that takes a relative amount of time, whereas the hatching of those chicks is rather a matter of a few moments. And likewise for the meditators. A meditator who, in a diligent manner and unrelentingly, keeps warming his or her zafu, sooner or later will bring about or will contribute to some incubation of knowledge, and then the actual realization of this knowledge or freedom is just a matter of a few mind moments. So the Buddha, in essence, says that it is a gradual path or the path, the practice is gradual in the sense that as we go along this so-called forerunner path or preliminary path, which means that as we go through the different insight knowledges, this just takes time. And for some, less, and for some, a little bit longer. However, sooner or later we'll all get to our destination. And then, when the right conditions are present, then the realization of the Dhamma, the realization of freedom or liberation, is just a matter of 1 or 2 moments. Now, in the context of this discussion, of course, people point to examples from the time of the Buddha, where certain disciples of the Buddha or members of an audience or some ascetics of different traditions would certainly come and meet the Buddha, hear a discourse, and certainly then gain the Dhamma. And so it seems like all so simple, so easy, and happening so quickly. However, and despite of this appearance, one should not forget, and oftentimes it's not mentioned in the text, that probably these different people who did gain realization quite quickly had already practiced to some extent, or at least perfected their paramis to some extent. Now, in a general sense, the realization of the Dhamma, getting the final taste of freedom or liberation, may happen in any posture. It may happen while you are in sitting meditation, but it may also happen while you are doing the walking meditation, really mindfully from moment to moment, and it may also happen during the standing meditation, or during the lying meditation, or any kind of general activity. So, as long as mindfulness is there, then this experience can take place. And since we all have this potential to gain the Buddha, however, we keep encountering all sorts of difficulties, and the Buddha is very well aware of this. He exhorts his disciples in the following way, namely, meditate, don't be negligent. So just keep going. And in Burma, there is a nice illustration for this. Namely, when a person happens to be in Yangon, which until recently was the capital of the country, but now is no more, and the capital has been shifted somewhere else, more in the center of the country. And so when a person somewhere in Yangon wants to visit the very famous Shwedagon Pagoda, well, what does he or she need to do first? Who knows? Just start walking?
Find out where it is.
Find out where it is, yes, and then what next? Find out where it is. This is one step, and so and then direct this body in that direction. And once you know the rough direction of the Shwedaram Pagoda, then all that remains for you to do is just place one step or one foot in front of the other, and sooner or later you'll get there. And so for some it may take a little bit longer, those who take short steps, but those who take long steps might get there a little bit more quickly. And so as long as our meditation practice is direct or is heading in the right direction, namely towards liberation, and we keep we keep exerting effort into we keep being mindful from moment to moment, and so on, then sooner or later we'll get there. Now, of course, within the 20-day retreat, it's certainly somewhat unlikely to realize the final goal of full liberation. However, there are certain aspects that are worth considering and knowing while one is on the path. And so, when one has chosen this certain spiritual path towards certain liberation, then it would be unrealistic or almost unrealistic to spend all of one's life in retreat. Only very, very few have the fortune to do this. And so for most people, even for the monastics, it is more a matter of alternating an occasional intensive retreat with a period of daily practice at home. And if one keeps doing this over a longer period of time, then the Dhamma will start unfolding. At first a little bit, and then gradually as we go on, more and more. Now in this context, the development, the unfolding of our meditation practice during intensive practice in comparison to the unfolding of our meditation during daily practice tends to be what? Rather slow or quick? During intensive practice, quick, and furthermore also steep. There will be a steep development. Whereas with daily practice, it may go. That unfolding will be not that steep. Now, when one does a retreat, let's say first time or even second, third time, whatever, and then has certain positive experiences in the practice, like experiencing the 10 imperfections of insight, and one then comes to a conviction or decision, yes, this is it, this is what I want to continue to develop, then, and one does so, then over time one will notice changes. Changes in with regard to one's own life in various ways. Now, meditators usually experience over time an improvement in their virtue. So virtue, sila, an ethical code of conduct. If at the before intensive practice or at the very beginning of it, one maybe didn't even have a notion of what virtue is all about, then gradually this changes, and gradually one realizes how important this is for one's spiritual work, and so one pays more and more attention to it. And there is, in the context of sila, a connection here to mindfulness. Namely, the more our mindfulness develops, the more we are acutely tuned into or aware of what is happening from moment to moment, especially in our mind, and we can catch all the different intentions or impulses that might come up in the mind. And some of them may be destructive and others may be constructive. Then the mindfulness will be the clue. And so if mindfulness is present in the face of some unwholesome or negative intention, then we can catch it. We can catch it, we're mindful of it, and we can pause for just a moment or two, and then long enough to reflect and to realize, if I were to act on this impulse, and then probably this could have some bad or negative consequences. So better not act on it. And this then will support the sila, the virtue, and it will ensure that one's virtue remains pure and intact. Whereas a person who is not accustomed to mindfulness, to being mindful from moment to moment, that person will most likely act on the impulse, and if it happens to be a negative impulse, then some negative consequences may arise from this. Now, what else changes in our or through our spiritual work over time? Concentration is another aspect. Namely, even if we happen to be the least or the greatly distracted person, and the mind continuously flitting here and flitting there, and it's all over the place, and we have a really hard we suffer from what nowadays is called the attention deficit disorder. Then we might find with patient satipatthana practice that sooner or later our mental condition no longer fits the description of ADD. No, attention deficit disorder. Yes, indeed. And so what at first may seem like a big shortcoming in one's life, then over time then develops just into its opposite, namely into a state of very strong concentration. And please don't forget, when you do this satipatthana meditation, and even without jhana practice, then you are developing this momentary concentration, khanika samadhi, from moment to moment, using different ultimately existing objects. So paramatta objects such as the rising and falling movement of the abdomen, pains and aches, and various mental states as they're truly existing. And so, if you keep doing this over a longer period of time, let's say a month, 2 months or so, and eventually your momentary concentration, khanika samadhi, in conjunction with other relevant mental states, the enlightenment factors, gets so strong that it is strong enough to bring about an enlightenment experience. And an experience that has the power to uproot some unwholesome mental states from the mind once and forever. So just see, or just try to fathom the potential of the concentration that we all have, and that we need to then realize. And so, in the course of our spiritual, carrying out our the spiritual work, will our wisdom deteriorate, or will it improve? What do you think? What will happen there? It will improve, for sure. And at first, this wisdom will arise in just very simple ways. Just knowing the nature of one rising movement, knowing the nature of a falling movement, knowing the specific nature of some pain, some ache, some hardness, some softness, and then gradually also getting to know the different mental states, and so on. So wisdom, and then discerning minded matter, and all of the other insight knowledges. So as we keep being mindful from moment to moment, we exert effort, concentration builds, then wisdom is bound to arise. And as our wisdom improves or increases, stage by stage, then which other wholesome mental state or factor does it strengthen? Who knows? An increase of wisdom leads to an increase of which other mental state? Renunciation, yes, that will be one. Equanimity, yes. Even more simple than this. Happiness. Everything is okay. Everything is correct up to now. There you go, faith. And so, see, there's a very simple connection between wisdom and faith. Every time a meditator realizes a new insight knowledge intuitively, and not just intellectually, but intuitively, then this will make the meditator understand, wow, I'm seeing something that I've never seen before. And there seems to be really something to this path. Really something is happening, and things keep changing over and over again. With this, and on top of this, one's experience then will accord to what is maybe said in the Dhamma talks, or what is written in the text, and so as a result of this, a meditator's faith increases. And of course, not necessarily in leaps and bounds, but then in smaller increments. And as this keeps happening with each and every insight knowledge over time, the faith gets pretty strong. Now, when we think of faith, then this faith is going to, is going to undergo major changes, namely from a rather volatile, weak faith, initial faith, all the way to unshaken faith of a stream enterer. A stream enterer who has unshaken faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So that's a tremendous change that takes place. Now, in the course of pursuing this spiritual path of Satipatthana, can you think of some other areas in which major changes occur, or may occur in your meditation, in your life? Balance, yes, indeed. Balance in the sense of So before we start with intensive practice, then we, without even realizing it, we may have a mind that the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita would describe as a tender and very sensitive mind. Comes the slightest criticism, the mind will shrink and wither and be very much concerned about the ego, losing or one's ego feels threatened. And so from this rather tender state of the mind, gradually, with more and more practice, does this mental factor of equanimity, of balance, of neutrality of mind, first of all, come into the foreground, and then the meditator will recognize it and understand what this equanimity is all about, and then gradually it gets stronger and stronger, up to a point, in particular during that knowledge of equanimity about formations, where equanimity is really top. And whatever may happen, one is no longer affected by it. So it is one then one is like a drop of water. No, one is like a lotus leaf that is slanted a little bit, and you drop some water on it, and so will the water stick to the leaf or not? It will not stick. It will gradually slide off the leaf. So nothing will stick to the mind. So this will make a huge difference in your daily life. If you can go through your daily life with a fair amount of equanimity, then things just don't bother you that much anymore. Other people may get irritated or sad or depressed and whatnot, and so you're just cruising along calmly and in a very unaffected manner. So, apart from balance, can you think of any further improvements in our life condition or mental conditions, as you like?
Well, you had mentioned health.
Health, yes, indeed. So the health, what, gets worse? Of course not. Although, just as an anecdote here, and as one undertakes this practice, sometimes certain meditation experiences occur, and they seem like some major health or major health concern or problem. And so, just to give you an example, at a particular point in the meditation practice, it is not uncommon for meditators to experience stabbing sensations in and around the heart area. And so, when these stabbing sensations, and they are not just mild stabbing sensations, but rather acute ones, and so when these keep occurring, the first day, and then another day, and another day, and then an uninformed meditator may surely think, oh my goodness, is all of this leading to a heart or cardiac arrest? And so I better go as some of our friends did, go to Taos to the clinic there or to the hospital there and have my heart checked. And then the heart specialists there, they do all the necessary tests to find out what? Nothing is wrong. And so there are certain Vipassana phenomena that look like one is suffering from some heart disease, or there's another case at one point, earlier point, it feels like one is suffering from malaria going through. And when you experience it yourself, oh, it's dreadful, I can tell you this. And so you go through periods of chills, no, and then followed by periods of sweating, and on top of this, let's say you're doing your walking meditation, or you intend to do walking meditation for 1 hour, and you can barely take the next step because you feel so exhausted, and you might barely make it back to your room to lie down and rest. And so it's not uncommon for meditators, especially in an Asian context where malaria is common, to then start taking anti-malaria pills, which after a few days turns out that it was the wrong. It turns out that it was the wrong decision. There is no malaria there. It's just practice related. That's all. So what I'm saying is, in the course of the meditation practice, there are certain events that look like an attack on our health, but they're not. And so one just needs to know this and be just very patient and just weather the storm, no matter what comes along next. So this meditation practice, oftentimes it does test the individual meditators. So one does need some amount of courage. Now, so Vipassana helps, or Satipatthana meditation helps for health. Yes, okay. And what next?
Endurance.
Endurance, yes, very much so. And to give you a nice example for this, at the beginning of a retreat, so you come fresh from Taos to the Vallecitos Mountain Refuge, then you receive the first instructions, and then you start practicing. And just 10 or 20 minutes into the first sitting, you start experiencing already some pains and aches. And so as you're observing it, you're trying really hard, and you've got lots of energy at the beginning, so you work with it, and to your dismay, that pain even increases. And then it gets unbearable, excruciating, and eventually you have to change your posture. Now, and so at that point, at the very beginning of the practice, the endurance is still relatively weak. Now, a few days into the retreat, having already dealt with a number of other pains, that initial pain that you faced on the first day is nothing in comparison. It's just peanuts. And yes, and the reason is that back then your level of endurance was weak, was rather low, and as you go along, gradually your endurance certainly improves, and you can put up with more and more pains and aches and more mental challenges. And so it just keeps going like this. And so the Satipatthana practice really leads to a strengthening of many different factors, and endurance is one of them. Now, what else can you think of? What about positive qualities like joy and happiness? You've heard all these talks on dukkha and the Four Noble Truths of dukkha. So this practice leads us to more and more dukkha, or less and less dukkha. Huh?
Happiness.
To happiness, yes, indeed. It leads us to joy and happiness. And as stated last night, the experience of the breakthrough, breakthrough to the Dhamma, is accompanied by a sense of deep sense of joy and happiness. And it's not this ordinary type of joy or happiness that you experience when you go out and watch a movie. And then, is that all in terms of changes? Are you satisfied with this little already? Well, if yes, then we can stop here. So, Chris, what else do you have?
I said renunciation.
Or renunciation. In which sense?
Being less interested in worldly, entertainment.
Material things, worldly things. So Chris is saying renunciation in the sense of being less and less interested in worldly or material things. And this is absolutely correct. And you see, as a non-meditator, we think that for our happiness and well-being, we have to rely on external gadgets. So, external gadgets like a computer or whatever latest computer game is around, or having all sorts of material possessions, or doing at least one or two, spending 1 or 2 holidays in the Caribbean Sea, and renting a yacht that costs $100,000 a month, and so on and so forth. Yes, there are people like this, more than you think, and so when we meditate, gradually we come to realize, as more and more joy and happiness is arising within, and also in the connection with renunciation, contentment is arising. So contentment then arises with whatever we have, with whatever social position we are or we find ourselves in. And then we realize that for true inner joy, happiness, peace, and balance of mind and whatnot, we don't really need those external gadgets that much. If we have them, it's okay. If we don't have them, it's also okay. No, it's something like this. And what this then does, it's in a sense, it's a form of inner liberation. You're less attached to external things of having to possess this object or that object. And then the meditation practice, as some have reported, also lead us to which wonderful qualities, mental qualities. Patience, yes, is certainly good. And then closely related to patience is which mental state. It starts in Pali with an M. For this you have to know the Pali term. So, Nicola, do you have any idea?
Related to patience?
Yes. Oh, it comes under adosa, non-hatred. Patience is one aspect of non-hatred. And the other one is, it starts with M in Pali, and in English it starts with an L. Well, loving kindness. So, metta. your metta. So as a further outcome, and so please do understand, for the arising of loving kindness metta, you don't even have to do Brahmavihara practice. It's kind of like an additional benefit that you get. Like when you go to Trader's Joe, then you get free. You get one for free, or even two for free. And this arising of metta, loving kindness, and compassion, karuna, and sympathetic joy and equanimity, as we've discussed already, these happen as part of our vipassana or satipatthana practice. And it's just when the mind is pretty much purified, at least temporarily, purified of the major unwholesome mental states, and then naturally do these wholesome qualities, these so-called divine abodes arise. And with this, then comes another major change in our life, namely, many people who do not practice, I'm not saying all, but certainly many, tend to be rather self-centered, rather ego-centered. And so they're always concerned with their own needs and trying to meet their own needs, and their thoughts are circling around themselves and their immediate family, and that's family and maybe work, and that's about it. And there is hardly any room for seeing others. And this over time changes. And so, and this is a natural outcome of the meditation practice, as you see over and over again that in the end there is no self, and there's nothing to identify with. In the end, everything is dissolving, and so what does the self have to get attached to or to identify with? Well, then gradually the mind gets the point that the self isn't all that important. And once this is happening to some extent, then we start to realize there are other beings around us. And they also have a right to exist, and they also might have certain needs. And so, why? And then one might be struck by a wonderful idea. Oh, what if I help this other person to achieve his or her needs or goals? And so gradually, over time, with this satipatthana practice, are we moving away from self-centeredness to a more position of being more tuned into the needs, or seeing others and their needs. Now, another major change that happens in the course of one's meditation, and this is over a longer period of time. As human beings, especially as non-meditators, we tend to have a very bad habit, namely, we always, or oftentimes, think highly of ourselves, and it's easy for us to disparage others and to find fault with others. So we're constantly seeing others' mistakes and shortcomings and disadvantages and whatnot. Now, this changes, and as one American, previously nun, but I think now no more, stated in her own words, the meditation practice has helped her to move away from seeing others' mistakes to seeing her own mistakes. And it is when we see our own mistakes that we can make the necessary adjustments and improve our ways, be they mental, bodily, or verbal. Now, maybe one more thing. The Visuddhimagga says, with regards, or in its chapter or the section on the first insight knowledge, it speaks of a person who has found a foothold and who has found comfort in the Buddha's teachings. And the quote is as follows. It's from chapter 19, paragraph 27. When a meditator practicing insight has become possessed of this knowledge, and what this refers to is the very first insight knowledge, namely the knowledge that corresponds to the purification by overcoming doubt. And so, when a person is possessed of this knowledge, he or she has found comfort in the Buddha's dispensation or teachings, and has found a foothold, and is certain of his or her destiny. Such a person is called a lesser stream enterer, a so-called Chula Sotapanna. And then the Visuddhimagga offers a verse which goes as follows. So would a bhikkhu or a meditator overcome, a bhikkhu, bhikkhuni or lay meditator overcome his or her doubts, and then ever mindfully let her discern conditions both of mind and matter thoroughly. And so what this then means, once a meditator has correctly gained the first insight knowledge, with this the person has found a thorough, firm foothold, and then is bound to move on into the second insight knowledge. And so it is relatively easy to become a lesser stream enterer, but it's more difficult to become a so-called Maha Sotapanna, a great Sotapanna, so a true, in the true sense. Now, what was mentioned yesterday about the unshakable faith in a Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, of the stream enterer, of course, was said with regard to the great Sotapanna, so the Maha Sotapanna, and not the lesser Sotapanna. So I'm saying this just for clarification. Now, sometimes certain meditators ask, well, what are the benefits for us when we are on a retreat and we don't as yet attain the higher insight knowledges, but rather we attain, let's say, the first 5 insight knowledges? Well, to this question, we can answer that just gaining, or the very fact that one is gaining already the first 5 insight knowledges is a tremendous achievement. And with this comes already a tremendous understanding of the basics of the meditation practice, and as most of you know by now, when one has gained the knowledge of the fast arising, passing away of formations, and including experiencing the imperfections of insight, then one feels rather inspired to carry on with one's meditation practice. And so this is a good starter. And on top of this, an understanding of the 3 universal characteristics is there. Now, it is certainly said, but I keep still looking for the reference. It is said in Burma that a person who has gained the fourth insight knowledge, namely the knowledge of the fast arising, passing away of formations, if he or she practices under the guidance of a skilled teacher, is bound to realize the Dhamma, is bound to gain the stream entry. But please, I do like the reference for this statement. Now, this then brings us to the end of tonight's talk, and let me conclude by wishing that may all of you taste this taste of freedom or of liberation, Vimutti Rasa, not only at the beginning of your practice, but also during the middling area of your practice, and eventually, based on diligent and steady practice during this retreat, and also future retreat or further retreats in the future, plus daily practice at home, may it lead you to an experience of the supramundane aspect of the taste of freedom, and may it thus lead you and all of us to true knowledge and to liberation. And this is it for tonight. So, you have any comments? And Nicola, I still owe you some explanations on Lumbini. You still want to hear on Lumbini? Yes? Okay. No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, but before this, Amy.
What number is the knowledge of equanimity of formations?
Yes.
What number is that?
Oh, well, it's a double-digit number. So, and it consists of one single figure, but it's the same figure. So 11. But so don't go by the numbers. Go by the full expression. This whole going by numbers is a bad habit. And I'm getting into this, I know. So, and then, yes, Yona.
I wanted to ask you, in my experience, your teaching style is unique.
Whose teaching style?
Yours.
Oh, mine. Oh. Why is that?
Well, I wanted to ask you if this is something you developed on your own, the methodology, and the specific question I have is, I wonder what your perspective is on the difference between sort of a natural unfolding of these insights and a directed, we'll look at this or look at that, and how that works.
Well, okay, so to answer...
I like it, but
it's working for you.
Very interesting. I mean, is this something only you do?
Well. Yeah, so all of this, of course, is based on the Buddha's teachings, no? And as you've noticed during the Dhamma talks, I keep referring back to one passage from here, another passage from there, and so on. So it's always, from my perspective, it's a nice way to have the Buddha have his word. give the Buddha a chance to express it in his words. No? And actually, it's just, in the end, many, if not all, of the discourses given by the Buddha are actually quite powerful. No? And this we realize when we're on a retreat. Gradually we get the deeper meaning. No? So anyways, that's just one aspect. So, based on the Buddha's teachings, and then the most venerable Sayadaw U Pandita, of course, has been my teacher for many years, and so I've practiced under him, and then also over many years sat in during interviews that he conducted for foreign meditators in Burma, and sitting in and then with a notepad and writing down what the meditators say, writing down what Sayadaw U Pandita said in return, and so on and so forth. And I just patiently, back then I didn't even know why I was doing it. Well, one reason was not to fall asleep. and so at home or in Lumbini, I have a bunch of a pack of a whole pile of notebooks filled with reports that meditators have given over the years in Burma, and now also in Lumbini. No? So that has also contributed greatly, and then I guess another point that was a helpful point was the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita was kind enough to take me along on these Dhamma trips abroad, and when he was invited to teach retreats here in the States, in Europe, and so then I went along and translated for him, and translated the Dhamma talks and conducted interviews for the yogis. So that's another point. But I guess a major factor that has contributed and shaped my way of working with the meditators are the meditators themselves. And just see, in Lumbini I do more or less the same thing I do here. We have 6 interviews a week, and so every day except for Saturdays, and sometimes going even into the afternoon, and then there I give 3 Dhamma talks a week, so 3 live talks, and on the remaining days the meditators listen to some CD recorded Dhamma talk, either of Sayadaw U Pandita or one of my recorded talks, and so just this exposure to the meditators over by now quite a number of years, and basically it's non-stop. It's kind of like almost 365 days a year, and I like being with meditators. I really appreciate it a lot, because I see meditators as being as human beings who are willing to purify their minds, and this is already much better than average. And so anyways, and so I've started in Lumbini. I started from scratch, and putting my Dhamma talks together from things that I remembered from Sayadaw U Pandita and his books, and then Visuddhimagga. Also, what helped a lot over the years was going back to the Visuddhimagga and then seeing what does it say. Some of those statements are actually quite complicated, but going over them again and again, and having to explain these various points to the meditators over and over again, and in ways that people can understand, that then gradually has also helped. And so occasionally what I do is I kind of get on a study project, and then I try to figure out, okay, how do meditators experience the mental state or mental factor of sukha, so happiness? No? How do they report it? How do they experience it and report it? And then I keep writing and collecting. And so then after a while it may be another mental state, or maybe next time it's tranquility, or who knows what comes next. No. And so then over the years, and in Lumbini, I still write down the reports given by the meditators. No, and occasionally also what I do is, there are always some meditators who have very clear experiences, and so then I might go over their reports, and so let's say if a particular insight knowledge is not quite clear, or a certain aspect needs to be understood better, then I see what they reported back then. I look at my own experiences from Burma and so on, and so this then becomes very very detailed. And
do you think that, like, in my experience, there's just a more open-ended direction to continue to be mindful versus now look at the dissolution of objects, because you're ready to do that?
Oh, well, I do simply just, under the premises of life is short, and the Dhamma is profound, there's much to be realized, we might as well get things done somewhat quickly. No, and under these premises, I do, kind of give hints or leading questions to meditators, or prepare the ground for what might happen next.
And cheating, right?
No, this much is okay. It's not no, and let's see. From a meditator's point of view, if you're, the only guidance that you receive is maybe just a comment like good or so. This will uplift you for a moment or two, but then when you're back on your cushion, you still might not quite know in which way to go. And as a result of this, see, a meditator oftentimes doesn't know in which direction to go. Now, like with the imperfections of insight, the natural inclination, human inclination, is to go right into those imperfections and to drown in them. Now, knowing this, and so even the teachers, their manuals do emphasize this, that the teacher has to patiently over and over and over again remind the meditator, don't get stuck in those imperfections. No, and so that then makes for certain instruction, and so that will then make me drop a hint, or I might say, well, look in this direction or that direction. And I guess also being a Westerner, and so having or at least partly grown up in the West, I have some understanding of the concepts other Westerners have grown up with, so it's easy to relate to. But when meditation is taught across cultures, then this adds another layer of difficulty to it. And also, my approach these days is be clear about what we want in the meditation, and yet to approach the whole thing with a relaxed and yet alert mind. So it's not this just total goal-oriented approach. It's not that. Absolutely not. No, but to know which way we're going, and so then then staying in the present moment and just observing whatever comes up. No. Okay, so then Cindy, your question.
Have you written any books? Or
Pardon me?
Have you written any books, or do you have any Dhamma talks available on CD or anything like that?
There are plenty. We have plenty in Lumbini. Why is that? You want to listen to some? Right now there are none on the internet, and I have no extra copies with me. But well, I'll be happy to provide you with some copies once I get back. No. Yes, Jeff.
A question about, you talked about getting the first insight or the fourth insight, and then if you practice under a teacher, you'll probably get somewhere. But what about if you die in the meantime? What practice?
So thank you very much for asking this question, because that's another aspect that I actually forgot to mention during the talk, namely Satipatthana practice as a preparation for death. So it's the best preparation you can think of. And first of all, just to get familiar with this mindfulness practice, so to know how to do it, and then to purify the mind as much as one can, and then when death is actually approaching, to remember that mindfulness and to keep the mind in a pure place. And to develop as much equanimity towards the things that are happening. No. So Sadhupanita says the best preparation for death is to lead a good life. And to lead a good life means to engage in wholesome activities, meritorious activities, such as keeping precepts, practicing Satipatthana or the jhanas, and reading Dhamma books, listening to Dhamma discourses, rendering the service, and so on. Does this answer? Oh, Yona, I have one question in return to you and maybe others. So you asked about this. You said it was a unique style and so on. So could you help me to improve further? And is there anything that has annoyed you and that you feel that I should be doing differently in the future? And I'll be happy to do it, to take your words and then to make the necessary adjustments. In the end, it's going to be for the benefit of the meditators.
Well, sometimes I think that maybe a longer, I don't know if it's practical, it wouldn't have been here, but sometimes a longer conversation to just clarify.
Oh, you mean during the interviews?
Yeah. Sometimes I left feeling like I hadn't, like the question you were asking me I could already answer, but I didn't have time to he didn't have time to get down to.
Well, in Lumbini, in Lumbini, usually what I do is, in a case like this, I would schedule the person to come last in line, and then there's usually more time.
Yeah.
And
let me think about that at all.
Now, what else? Well, Nicola, the practice in Lumbini. Well, what do you want to know?
I have a bunch of questions, and some of them are kind of nuts and bolts, and I'm guessing not very interesting to some people.
You mean like the food there and?
I was thinking more like if you need certain, like in Burma, a special meditation visa, and those logistical things.
Oh, yeah. So for Nepal, so visas, and then what else?
I'm curious if you do if there's any text study, or if it's all practice, and kind of what kind of rhythm you're moving at with the practice. Is it how intensive it is? In terms of, you talked about getting to 2:30.
No, not like this. Nope.
Yes, it's a sort of overall idea of what the experience is, and also if most of the other meditators are foreign, or if there's Burmese or Indian, or I don't know. I'm just curious what's
our mix there, mix of nationalities. Well, to start with the last question, the center, or what the meditators who are coming and practicing at the center come from a great number of different countries, and so oftentimes we have like the meditators from 22, and I think in 1 year even up to 32 different nationalities there. And so the name that was chosen for the center, namely Panditarama Lumbini International Vipassana Meditation Center, is really or has come true. So it's an international mix, and but when the Venerable Sadhu Pandita comes to Lumbini in order to teach a 10-day retreat in February of every year. Then he brings with him a number of Newar meditators. It's usually just one. It's one bus load full of them, and so about 35. And so at that point we're somewhat crowded, and at that point the Newars are in the majority. But Newar, it's an ethnic group in Nepal, and it's actually a Buddhist group. Pardon me?
Did you say it's Nepalese people?
Well, see, Nepal has like at least 60 different ethnic groups, if not more, and so the Newars are one such ethnic group, and they're actually the descendants of the Buddha. So they have family names, last names such as Shakya, and like Shakyamuni, like Shakyamuni. And so they're Buddhists, and they come, and so they participate, but in that 10-day retreat. But otherwise, once the retreat is over, then they go back. So for the remainder of the year, we have more. How to put this? More meditators from outside of Nepal who come and meditate. So mainly from Western countries.
Are you teaching in English?
Yes.
Yeah.
and well, as the need may be. So sometimes for some in German, or for some in French, or for some the Italians now I ask to give their reports in Italian, and I try to answer in Italian. And with the Burmese, it's in Burmese. And so there's that. And then then your first question was about visas, no? So visas is very simple. When you enter the country, you get a 2-month visa, either at the entry point. So this could be the Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu, or at the border with India, and you pay $30 for that. And then the visa regulations for Nepal say that a tourist can stay at the most 5 months in a calendar year. And so what a number of our meditators do is, or let's say theoretically, what one could do is one could come somewhere beginning of August, stay for 5 months all the way until December 31st of that present year, then briefly cross the border into India, which is not far away, and then spend the night there, and then come back or re-enter Nepal the following day, namely January 1st, and then get another or be permitted to another or maximum of another 5 months. So theoretically as much as 10 months. So far we've had maybe 1 or 2 foreigners who stayed for something like 6 or 7 months in a row. So what most people do is they come about beginning October, mid of October, and at that point the climate is rather agreeable, and then they stay through the winter until about end of March, when it gets somewhat hotter. But this is for those who prefer the cold. And then you have those people, those meditators who prefer the hot season over the cold season. But there are less of those.
And are there times each year when you're there and gone? Are you on a regular schedule in terms of months that you're in Lumbini and months that you're teaching abroad?
Yes, well, so far over the last couple of years, pretty much it's been the same thing. I've been away for 3 months out of a year, and for the remainder, I really make it a point to be available in Lumbini for the meditators. I'm not even traveling to India. I mean, at the most 1 or 2 trips to Kathmandu for maybe 2 days or 3 days at the most, and that's it. Well, you can guess.
July.
Yes, July is there, June is there, and so anything usually from about beginning of April to, oftentimes it works this way, beginning of April, beginning of July, or let's say mid-April, mid-July, or end of April, end of July. So it's basically April to July. And next year I'll be gone beginning of April and returning end of July. So there's that. Last winter, for the first time, there was a request from Sadhu Pandita that I should come or return to Burma and translate during the 2-month winter retreat there. which then I turned down, giving a number of reasons. And one of the main reason is that the winter season is the main season for us in Lumbini. In terms of meditators, that's where we have the most meditators. In the summer, there's not that much, or not that many coming. And the other reason was also of a financial nature. So I do hope that I don't have to, or that the Venerable Sadhu Pandita can make other arrangements, and that I can be available for meditators in Lumbini.
How do you find that out?
Well, by waiting. Pardon me?
Do you have a website where that information is?
Yeah. We have a website, and so if that really happens, which I don't think, then it will be posted there.
What months would those be?
Or December and January. No, but it's almost it would really go against the development in Lumbini, and I don't think that Sadhu Pandita will. If really, then at the most it would be for a shorter period of time. I would insist on, or at least trying to, find such a solution. Then maybe someone else also then translates those talks. But once again, I don't think this will happen. So that then takes care of the visa, and and then from our monastery, the 2-month visa can be extended with a recommendation letter from the monastery, from the meditation center, and so it's feasible, and it's good, especially for a longer stay, to have a valid multiple entry visa for India. And so that helps for the visa run, just in case the Nepali immigration is causing problems, but it also saves you $30 for the third month, for the third month extension, and furthermore, just in case of some political turmoil, if you have that valid multiple entry visa for India, then you can anytime cross over into India and you're safe. Whereas otherwise you might be stuck in Nepal. So, well, in the past, you just wouldn't believe under what kind of circumstances we've had to operate. Now things have calmed down greatly. It's much more peaceful now than it was maybe a year or two ago. Nepalese politics is such that any political group or ethnic group that feels somewhat suppressed will declare a general strike. And then for the entire country, and the entire country gets shut down, and then there's no more vehicles moving, and all the shops are closed, and wherever you happen to be, there you'll be stuck for a day or two, or sometimes even longer. And but we've learned to become more and more flexible, and there are always ways around it. So if this kind of thing happens, and maybe there's some transportation strike or so, and the vehicles are no longer plying the roads. And then there's still the rickshaws, and you might enjoy a rickshaw ride from Lumbini to the border, to the Indian border, which is not so bad after all. So it's just, it's just a way of how you look at it. And then this. What was the second question?
Schedule and study.
Oh, schedule. Yes, right. So, schedule. Now, the schedule is somewhat closer to this one here. So, wake up at 4, and 4 in the morning. There's a bell, and then the first sitting from just like here from 5 to 6. Breakfast at 6, and then followed by alternating periods of sitting meditation, walking meditation, and please notice we have no work period. You may like that. And so we do require, though, that the meditators keep their room clean and contribute to the cleanliness of the common bathroom, and so once a week. 3 meditators sign up to clean the meditation hall. So this involves vacuum cleaning and so on. But that's it. So practice in the morning hours, and interviews just like here, starting sometimes 8:30, depending on the number of meditators, and then lunch at 11, from 11 to 12, then a nap period or rest period until 12:30, and then a walking session from 12:30 to 1, and then sitting from 1 to 2, and then walking 2 to 3, and so on. And there's one longer sitting in the afternoon from or a sitting of 1.5 hours. I think it was until 5 o'clock. So from 3:30 or so to 5 o'clock, something like this, or from 3 to 4:30. And then Dhamma talk 1 hour earlier than here, so 5:30, and then juice at 7, and so then usually meditators go until about 9 o'clock, but of course those whose practice is going quite strong, they practice much longer than that. No, so that's in terms of schedule, and then we do not offer, at least not for the time being, offer any sutta studies or so. I wouldn't personally. I would be even interested in that, but. So far, our center is a practice-only center. However, if you're flexible, things could be worked out. In Lumbini, there is the so-called Lumbini International Research Institute, which has a big library on world religions, with an emphasis on Buddhism, and so they have the entire Tipitaka, Theravada Tipitaka in Burmese script, in Thai script, in Roman script, in English translation. I think they're trying to get the Sinhalese version, and then also the entire Tibetan canon, and the Chinese texts, and then plenty of commentaries and modern books on Buddhism, and so on and so forth. And so if you are interested in Buddhist studies, then what you could do is stay at one of the other monasteries, like the Korean monastery, as a pilgrim or meditator or student of Buddhism, and then every day you go over to the library, and you make some arrangements with the director there, Dr. Coopers, and then he would get you all the books that you want to read, and then you do your studies there. No, that would be more self-studies. Or and one never knows something. See, in Lumbini we try to be, or as a whole, the entire monastic community, we're quite flexible. So there's also the so-called Myanmar Golden Temple, which is a Burmese government monastery, and which the Burmese government set up for their Burmese pilgrims to have an accommodation. And so at that monastery they have, you usually have two monastics, Burmese sayadaws, in residence, and they tend to be well educated in terms of pariyatti, no? And some of them with the English we'll have to see, but I could help you schedule something with them, or with the Thai monastics, or just something. So that's that. What else?
I want to give other people a chance to ask questions too.
So, Alan, do you have any connected question?
It occurred to me, how do you support your monastery?
Our center is operating entirely on a donation basis, so on the Dana principle, and this has been the case ever since the beginning, and since day one. And we've never, and Sadhu Pandita expressly asked us not to set any fee, and we've very much lived according to and worked according to his direction. And so basically, I guess our main source of financial resource comes from the meditators themselves. However, having said, I don't even know the exact percentage, but however, within the last year or a year and a half, there was some heavy construction that took place, which is now more or less over, and we built an ordination hall, and that was quite expensive, and so then a number of non-meditators contributed towards this. And in a sense, it's really inspiring to see how the center developed more or less from scratch. When I started over 9 years ago, Sadhu Pandita sent 4,500 Nepali rupees per month as food money. So that's slightly more than $50. It was slightly more than $50. And then gradually the meditators showed up, and they stayed, and they donated, and we managed to survive. So, any more? There's some question. There's some person in the back I can't quite see.
The elevation.
Oh, it's Nick. Nick, I have good news for you. We are at a particularly low elevation, which is hard to beat, namely 100 meters above sea level. This is close to perfect, close to what you're used from Florida.
Thank you.
Wait, there's one more who's Vivin.
I have a question. Hopefully it's not to duplicate, but I'm interested in the retreat that's December to January in Burma.
Yes, right.
How would a meditator know if that would be useful for them to go to? And is it a good? I can't read what I wrote now because I got so.
Yeah, I got your note.
Good introductions to Burma. If I want to study. If you want to study with Sadhu Pandita, this would be indeed the best time to do so.
because during those 2 months he'll be in residence and he'll be giving most of the Dhamma talks. However, he's no longer conducting interviews. And but there'll be a number of other, or he will be assisted by a number of other Burmese sayadaws, and so they then will conduct the interviews. And so that retreat seems like very well organized, and it will take place at the so-called Semaingon or Panditarama Semaingon Forest Meditation Center, which is about 40 miles northeast of Yangon, so towards Bago. And so it's a big forest center. By now, I think it's over 100 acres, and they've got plenty of buildings there. Meditation huts, like over 100 buildings. And food is well. Sadhu Upanita oftentimes likes to say he likes to what's the word? Not underestimate. Understate. He likes to understate it by calling it jungle food, but it's jungle food consisting of at least 3 main dishes or 3 main courses, and with altogether 9, 10, 11 different dishes. So there's much more than enough food there. And so, translation will be available, and so there are many meditators who are going there in the winter. And so I heard last winter there were over 100, if not even total, as a total number, even approaching 200. No, that's not 200 all at the same time, but over the 2-month period. But for that, do know it's going to be tough, and it's going to be tight discipline. And just like Yona said, the wake up bell at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the first sitting is I think at 4, and so on. And they're very strict on not allowing the meditators to go back to their rooms outside of the schedule. And also after lunch, yes, but not in between. And it seems, that's the impression I get, I don't know for sure, but it seems at night you have to stay in the hall until the last sitting is over. And also, the more you are prepared the more your own meditation practice is developed before you go there, the better for you. And I'm saying this because then you'll be, if sometimes it gets difficult, then it will be easier for you to handle the situation. Of course, naturally you'll receive lots of support in the form of interviews and so on, but I'm just on top of that. Well, now, what else do you want to know about Burma or that retreat?
So is it safe?
Safe.
Itself.
Sure.
Yeah. having never traveled to India or anything like that?
Well, there's definitely probably less upheaval than in Nepal. It's on the surface. Myanmar seems or is quite peaceful. Then, any more questions? Yes? There's one in the back, yes?
I don't know. Is there somebody behind you?
Oh, yeah. Who please just speak up.
Is your center in...
Oh, Joan.
Are there any nuns living there?
Where?
At your center?
Yes, we have two. And 2 Burmese nuns. And, now we have even 3. And we have 2 Burmese and one newly arrived from Taiwan. And she will be there for a year as a volunteer. So it's basically the 3, the 4 of us who are running the center, and then we have local staff.
What kind of food do you have?
Well, food to eat. And breakfast is somewhat similar to here. Maybe not as high class as here, but we offer muesli, the muesli with cornflakes, and then as a specialty buffalo or yogurt made from buffalo milk, and then with fruits, and then monastery baked fresh bread, and then buffalo milk, and then your usual selection of coffee and tea to go with the buffalo milk, and so that's and then cheese. Cheese from Butwal, and then the usual thing. And then for lunch, rice is the staple, and then depending on who cooks, sometimes we have Burmese, various Burmese, vegetarian dishes. So there'll be typically 1 or 2 vegetable dishes, and then maybe some tofu dish, or even that mixed, and then some sort of a dessert, and a soup, and oftentimes fruits. And that's and so overall, the meditators are getting. Or Alan, what do you think?
It's excellent food.
Yeah. Okay.
It's also clean. It's well presented, and it's abundant.
And water.
And water. Our water is first boiled, and then on top of this filtered. So it goes through a ceramic filter. So in India, when you travel in India, you have to be very careful not to get some gastrointestinal illness. But at the center, usually the meditators are quite okay. Once in a while, yes, there is something, but it's not that frequent. And so if you plan on coming, then if you want to be absolutely on the safe side, then bring some water purifying tablets, or just some water purifying device, and also bring maybe in addition to the food, bring some the food that you're getting at the center, bring some multivitamin tablets, and what some of our meditators meditators do. They bring their own peanut butter because they like to have some more of that, and so they just put it on the table, and that's fine. Yes, Yona.
Oh, I just wanted to know how we would find out when you're coming back here to the States to teach.
Oh, you better address Marcia and Chris. Well, this is still in process. We don't know
But how does anybody know how I could get on a list or stay informed of that retreat whenever it does happen? But would you definitely just come here, or?
Probably. And so it's definitely not going to be 2008, but maybe 2009, or then more likely 2010. And I haven't made up my mind yet. It's also a matter of, Sayadaw Pandita, for this retreat, as you've heard at the beginning, he's limited my stay abroad to 3 months. And so when I first planned this trip, it was more than 3 months. It was something like 112 or 114 days. And so I sent my travel or the schedule to him for his blessing and final approval. And so the comment in return was, kindly don't exceed 3 months. And as a result of this, I had to cut short this retreat by 2 days, and the retreat at the Forest Refuge in Barrie by 3 days, and so, the retreat in Australia by 4 days. And I'm still slightly above 90 days, and this has partly to do with the traveling. There's some extra days. And then in the future, the Europeans, they want to have a 1 month retreat here, 1 month retreat at the Forest Refuge. There's an invitation for a 1 month retreat, and maybe even Canada, maybe Israel. Who knows? I know. So I haven't made up my mind how to arrange that.
But will it likely you'll be going back to the Forest Refuge also?
Well, where do you prefer to have the retreat? You'd rather have it.
Would you do it for longer?
Pardon me?
Would you consider doing it for a month?
Yes, actually. I really prefer doing a longer 1 month retreat over a 10-day retreat or a 20-day retreat. No, because as by now all of you or most of you know, with a longer retreat, there's just a greater potential to move ahead further. If you just do a weekend retreat or a 10-day retreat, by the time you've warmed up a little bit, it's already time to go back home, and also from my side, it's somewhat boring. Having to hear the same reports and the 5 hindrances and over and over again. There's a drawback to giving many interviews a week. Would you prefer to have it in New Mexico or in?
How about Santa Cruz, California?
Oh, and you're proposing Santa Cruz, California. What? You have a place there?
What?
Do you have a place there?
Yeah.
But please, Yona, organizing a retreat and sitting a retreat is not the same thing. No.
You're just asking me my preferences.
Right. So far the decision is not out, so we'll just have to wait. And I don't know yet. Okay, anything else?
Find out your website. website address is?
Oh,
But I just don't remember.
oh, the website address is www and then the dot Panditarama, Panditarama dash in the middle, and then lumbini.info. So.
And your schedule is on there, right?
And the schedule, well, I hope for the next year it's on there already.
Do you mark on the schedule to the countries you go to if the Dharma talks are in English?
That's we'll see. Well, next year, well, in the future, definitely it will be marked. Or next year, I'll be conducting a 9-day retreat in Germany, and so for the very first time, just imagine. So far, I've always avoided giving retreats in Germany. And so anyway, so that retreat will be in German, most likely. Okay. Anything else? We're almost approaching 9 o'clock, so maybe this much for tonight. And then I wish all of you a fruitful continuation of your retreat here until the morning of the 25th, and then when you go back, when you get on the bus here, please don't leave your Dhamma practice behind, but rather take it with you. And then at home, keep it nice and warm, and then we'll just do another retreat whenever an opportunity comes up. And so who knows, sooner or later we'll meet again, either here or in Lumbini or in Santa Cruz or in Barrie, who knows where. Voila. And so then tomorrow morning, Alan and I will be leaving, and so Chris is kind enough to drive us up to Taos. So I say, I say goodbye to all of you.
Goodbye, all.
Thank you.